Hello.
Sabah.
Hi, Kishloy, to talk about Utpal and my favorite topic of dawns.
Yes, the dawns.
The dawns. Huh?
I know.
I never had so much fun in covering politics as in covering dawns. And Utpal knows more about them than any other reporter I know. Huh?
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
I'm putting my headphones, so let's.
and you guys will have to kind of drive it. I, I know. I don't know dawns. I know actually terrorists.
Yeah, I know. But you say you get the thing, no? Yeah. Okay. So how is this? What is the platform about? I mean, anyway, we won't go there. We'll get the introduction. Carry on.
Right. Okay. I'll start then.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Chantal De Costa, and I'll just introduce the One Vote project. So One Vote is an initiative to examine a diverse set of inputs and perspectives regarding the introduction and evaluation of technology as part of elections. Actually, this was started to only look at blockchains, but now we've broadened it out. It began in May 2021. The project works with stakeholders in the electoral process to understand, present, and discuss knowledge from various domains: media communications, disability rights, citizens' rights, technology designs, and constitutional powers. About the platform, so One Vote is hosted at Hasgeek, a platform for collaborations across practices surrounding technology design, law, policy, systems, data, and related topics. So how it works is we have all the content is generated by users and shared by the practitioners of whatever field it is. So far, we have designed and hosted public deliberations looking at voter verification, electoral roll deduplication, and several internet-based voting activities. We've also written an interim report and just finished up with our first edition of an annual conference. What we aim to do here is enable participants to acquire foundational knowledge and perspectives to evaluate the intended and unintended consequences of technology interventions. And we want to focus on identity, equity, privacy, security, rights, agency, and the socio-economic impacts of such proposals. This series, as you know, is being done in collaboration with the Jindal School of Journalism and Communication. As for audience questions, if you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function and we'll call upon you. Alternatively, you could put your questions in the chat box on Zoom, or if you're joining us from the YouTube live stream, we'll be monitoring that chat as well. We welcome Sabah Naqvi and Utpal Pathak. Now I will hand this over to Professor.
Thank you, Chantal, and a very good evening from, or afternoon from India. As you can understand from my attire, I am situated in a cold, bleak, North Indian village, the Tehsil of Jagdishpur in Sonipat district, where my university is located. And another election is upon us. Elections in India is almost like a wedding. It is huge in terms of size and logistics and the number of people who are involved in that. And joining me today, as you mentioned, is Sabah Naqvi and Utpal Pathak. Both have covered elections on the ground for several decades. Utpal is an independent journalist based in Lucknow, though I have encountered him in Benares. But I suppose he traverses the badlands of India's, North Indian political strongholds. Sabah has some wonderful stories, I know, and but just before we get to the stories, I'd like to put a little. Introduce criminality, as in when we say criminality in politics, what are we exactly meaning? In today's show, we will touch upon other aspects of criminality, but we'll be referring mostly about the the criminals, as we understand, as a layman would understand, criminals in politics, because that's a sense that most people have, that Indian politics are full of criminals. You know, Dr. Johnson famously said that patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. In 2005, I think Ram Guha said that in India, it is often the first refuge. But if we replace the word patriots with politics, it would still hold true. And nearly 43% of the new members of the lower house of the parliament have won elections with facing criminal charges in the 2019 Lok Sabha. And in the 17th Lok Sabha, I mean, the number of people with ministers with criminal cases, out of 56 ministers, 39% have declared criminal cases against themselves. Ministers with serious criminal offense, 29%. Ministers with cases related to attempt to murder. There is one, Mr. Murali Dharan from Maharashtra, a Rajya Sabha member of the BJP, declared a case related to attempt of murder. And the list goes on. Now, just as we have, as I mentioned, the elections upon us in Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, and Manipur, we know that a large number of candidates who are in the fray have criminal charges against them. Now, having criminal charges and being convicted of the crime are two different things, I understand. But when they go to the people, why do people vote for these criminals? Now, that is what the question that we will try and understand in today's show, because it is, people make light of it. It's almost like an obvious thing. Oh, you're in politics, you must be part of that nexus. But is it really something to be made light of? Is it something that we should accept? Is it something that is given? Perhaps not. It is perhaps the most critical of issues that face us today, that faces Indian democracy. And I'll take you back to 2014, the momentous year for Indian democracy, with the coming of Narendra Modi, who had made two promises. His first speech, sometime I think in June 2013, when actually the election campaign kicked off, he had said, Devalaya nahi Sauchalaya, not temples but toilets. Well, today we know that several toilets have been built, but along with that, temples have been built as well, dividing the country, almost splitting the country in the middle. He had made one more promise, and I don't know how many of you remember that promise. He said that if he became prime minister, no accused, and I quote, no accused with criminal charges will dare to fight the polls. Who says this cleansing is not possible? And in another statement, Modi said with a sense of urgency, we have to do away with criminalization of politics, and delivering more lectures won't help. I'm not sure that when he looks at his parliament and when he looks at the candidates in the fray for his elections that he's fighting, will agree with himself. Sabha, if I may ask you to start with your favorite crime story in politics, and I know you met many of them, but which one would stand out?
So, Utpal and Kishloy, Utpal has probably met more than me also, because he lives right there. For me, it was an outing. But anyway, on the issue of crime, so let's take it level by, because there is so much money in politics now, way beyond the limits. That's one of the reasons why we are going to, Utpal and I will talk about the obvious criminals, the so-called dons, the muscle men, those who have kidnapping, murder, extortion, that kind of, the classic criminal don, quote unquote, figure of the Hindi heartland, which is what I'm familiar with in Bihar and in UP. But even as I get into that, let us understand that the biggest criminals when it comes to politics are the unseen people. who are giving huge amounts of unaccounted wealth into politics. That's which you are going to deal with in a later program. In a way, that is a deeper rot which has set in. But let's just get to the story of why does the Hindi heartland, why has it produced so many Dawn-like figures who have succeeded in politics? First, we are talking about two regions, both states which have had limited industrial development, limited, even though I would say UP is better than Bihar in terms of urbanization. But you've had a little ways to, you've had that kind of economic growth that you've seen in the West and in the South. It has not come to these areas, number one. Number two, there is a whole social hierarchy, which is the caste system, which plays out, this is for a sort of international kind of audience, am I right? Is it? So let's just put the explanations here. The caste system, the caste hierarchies, the social inequalities are very much part of these regions. They are there elsewhere in India, but in a fundamental way, the way Tamil Nadu has moved on, for instance, after the Dravida movement, this has not happened in the Hindi belt. You have these social inequalities. So you have the phenomena of these criminals who are muscle men, who with henchmen, and some are actually criminals, some are representatives of a caste or a community or just Robin Hood figures who get cases against them, and then one section of society views them as criminals. So even within the Dons, there are distinctions here. I'm going to start off with the story of one guy who was definitely a criminal first, which is the story of arguably the most famous Don who died recently, just last year. A gentleman called Mohammad Chabudine of the town of Siwan in Bihar. Mohammad Chabudine has been a MP, member of parliament multiple times. And not only I had encountered him during my political travels reporting on Bihar, but then I went on to write an essay about him. So I met him extensively a few times. So this was in a book which had new writings from India published by Penguin. And I wrote an essay called The Sahib of Siwan, which is what he was in those days. So just to very vividly describe he was a criminal who then became a political big wig in politics. And he began because he operated in an area where a lot of the left cadres of a group called the CPI-ML were threatening the landed communities over there. This is about the social conflict, the feudal, the Thakurs, the Bhumiyars, the sort of landed castes of Bihar. He gave protection to the landed people and he bumped off some of the cadre for which he would get paid. In time, he did murder for hire. He did kidnappings for hire. In time, he would just became stronger and stronger. As his political network grew, he also got social support because he could get things done. He got support from sections of society because he could get things done. Now, the time that I went to Siwan, which would be in 2003, 2004, something like that, when I met him extensively, he was supposed to be in jail. But he was actually occupying an entire floor of the Siwan hospital, which he had built. There was a stadium he had built. There was everything he had built. The cult, so I don't think that we have equivalents anywhere of the kind of Dawnship. Dawnship is what I'm going to, that Shahabuddin acquired, however briefly, in the town of Siwan. The shopkeepers there used to keep his pictures in case his thugs come along and they get bumped off. So while I went to meet him, there was he was seated there. He was a tall, strapping, well-built, muscular guy. He spoke a little bit of English, Hindi. He was surrounded by his henchmen with guns in the middle of a hospital. And the first person who came to interview him, and it's all in my essay, who came to meet him was a policeman who came there for a particular transfer. Somebody else, some other bureaucratic figure came because they wanted admission for their daughter in Aligarh Muslim University. So this was it was like the Godfather kind of scenario. Take that into a Bihar town. He would hold forth, dispense favors, and his guys would be there with the guns. So I was sitting in the sort of thing of a don in a hospital who should be in jail. So everything was being subverted over there. He was quite charming to me the first day, but the next day, what happened is, I went and when I left there, I went and met some of his political opponents. So the next day when I went back to meet him for more information, he knew that I had met them. So it was a town that was run by him. He knew, and he was nasty and he was threatening. I mean, the psychopathic killer, easy murderer was back in the frame. He was nasty and he was threatening. And there was a coldness and a sort of sinister thing. It was quite scary, actually. It's like I just needed to get out of there. So that was the story of Chabudine. He was an absolute don. He ran a town. He built institutions in the town. He murdered people. He did kidnappings. He had a gang. They did things through extortion. The politician of the day, Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav, was scared of him. I heard the account from a DGP that Lalu once, pretending, even though he represented Lalu Prasad Yadav's party, that Lalu once told him, it was a very well-known man called DGP Ojha, to somehow get him killed in an encounter. And when they went for an encounter, Chabudine escaped in a burqa and he crossed the border into Uttar Pradesh. It's a famous story of those days. And the DGP said that Lalu kept on calling him up, saying, "Mar gaya sala, mar gaya ki nahi." And when he reappeared, Lalu went and stood next to him and grinned and said, "My brother Chabudine." So do you get it? He escapes from that encounter, which the DGP says that this guy is wanting him bumped off, actually, because he didn't know what to do with him. He couldn't handle it, because he had some political clout by then. He was winning the Lok Sabha election. He won it multiple times. But then slowly over time, let's also recognize that in the end, regimes changed. Mr. Chabudine ended up in jail with no political patronage, and he would die in jail. And I have very little sympathy for him because I found him pretty scary, actually. And I've met other dons also. So, but I think let's go over to Utpal, who can sort of perhaps make the distinction between the criminal don who enters politics or the Robin Hood figure who is also described as don. I think Utpal would have a more nuanced, he would have a nuance of that. So maybe we can just, get him into the conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, Abha. Utpal, who is today's Chabudine?
Sir, I would never beg to differ to this, but yes, Chabudine is a big name. He was a big name in Bihar. He was the king of Siwan for a long, long time. He was a member of parliament. But in the later years, Nitish Kumar tried to control him, and even his wife Hina Shahab also lost the elections of assembly, and she lost 2 elections simultaneously. So it was a message that the Don was no more a Don in front of the public. When it comes to UP, I would not. I'm not saying that I'm going to glamorize anyone in UP, but when it comes to Uttar Pradesh, there are people who are much bigger than Shahabuddin in all of this state. This is a big state. This is a state where around 20 crore people used to live. Before giving a picture of the criminal scenario of the state, I would like to present some data in front of you, which is a recent data. So in 2022 elections, about only the first phase, the ADR, Association for Democratic Reforms, has come up with the data. Out of 615 candidates who were analyzed, 156 candidates, that means 25 to 26% of those candidates are criminal candidates. And 121 among those 156, about 20% of the total 615 candidates, they have serious criminal charges against them. So when it comes to serious criminal charges, it is related to murder, it is related to crime against women, it is related to extortion, it is related to handling a gang, or whatever you can think of. It is related to liquor, smuggling, anything. Then we come to the list of the parties. Samajwadi Party has given the highest number of tickets to the criminal candidates. They have given around 75% of tickets to criminals for the first phase. And out of them, 61% are serious. They have serious cases against them. BJP has given 51% of tickets to criminals and 39% of them are serious criminals. RLD has given 59% of tickets to criminals and 52% of them are serious criminals. Indian National Congress has given 36% of tickets to the criminals and about 19% of them are serious cases against them. BSP, Mayawati's party, has given around 24% of tickets to the criminal candidates and 29% of them are having serious cases against them. Aam Aadmi Party, who tend to be a cleaner party, and they're also in the political battle of UP this year, they've also given tickets to around 15% of candidates who have criminal cases against them, and 10% of them have serious cases against them. That's fine. Now let us start with UP and the crime. I don't know that the criminalization of politics in UP is the definition or the politicalization of crime is the definition. But yes, both of the things are coinciding each other since past 3 or 4 decades. It started in the early 80s, or you can say it started after the era of the emergency. It started in the early 80s during the regime of Madam Srimati Indira Gandhi, when she was the prime minister of this country. Congress tried to get some candidates with criminal background in elections. And similarly, this war in Gorakhpur started between Harishankar Tiwari and Viren Pratap Shahi. Harishankar Tiwari was supposed to be the first person. You can call him a mafia, you can call him a big criminal, you can call him a bahubali or whatever. He was the one who was the first known criminal who came into politics in the early 80s. And then there were his opponents, Viren Shahi, and there were some more opponents who were Rajput, who belonged to the Rajput community of Gorakhpur region. They also came into the politics simultaneously, and that's how it started. Then came this organized crime system, which started changing their gears in the late 80s, and by the early 90s, you can calculate this was the same era when this Babri demolition took place, and BJP also came to power. So BJP also started giving tickets to the criminals since the early 90s as well. And in the same era, when Mulayam Singh Yadav came up with his Samajwadi Party and Kashiram came up with his Bahujan Samaj Party, then the regional politics came in, and all of these regional parties, they were very eager to give tickets to the criminals, because the criminals have got their own clouds in their respective areas, and the assembly elections particularly were more local elections. So all of these criminals were kind of a big help for every political party, be it is Congress or BJP, a national party like them, or be it is regional parties like BSP or SP. All of them were so eager to give tickets to the criminal candidates since the early 90s itself, that in past 3 decades, we have been seeing a lot of criminal candidates contesting in the various elections of Uttar Pradesh every year and going to parliament or the assembly buildings regularly. As far as this differentiation is concerned, when we say about the criminal candidates, there are 2 types of criminal candidates. One is the criminal candidate which comes from an organized mafia or an organized criminal background of a gang or a group or something. And then there is an unorganized criminal who is into his own personal things and who has done his own crime which are of a personal nature or subject to a particular area. But in UP, the problem is that after every 5 kilometers, you'll find a small mafia or a bigger mafia or a bigger mafia than that mafia. This is a land of mafia goons. This is a land of gundas. This is a land of hooligans. And this is a phenomenal affair which goes on every year. So elections come after every 5 years, no? But the clout of the criminals, the power of the criminals is a thing which is an yearly affair, because they are involved into local activities, because they are also involved into the local festivals. They're also involved in the local body elections as well. They're involved in every activity which is related to the society. So that's how they enjoy the power and that's how they grow the power. Now it comes to this Robin Hood image, or what you call as the hero worshipping of the criminal candidates. So, like Sabha has said, that a particular candidate like Mukhtar Ansari is in jail from past 25, 23 odd years, but he is termed as a Robin Hood candidate because despite he's in jail, he keeps on working for the people of his constituency. He keeps on asking for their health. He keeps on writing letters for their education, for hospital services and whatnot. So that's how he's considered as a Robin Hood candidate. We have got other Robin Hood candidates as well who are in jail or out of the jail, but they are still trying to help people. But they're also killing or they're doing some conspiracies or doing some criminal activities against any particular community. So a particular community might refer to them as criminals. But the way this Robin Hood politics is going on, or the way this organized mafia politics is going on, as far as like Sabha has explained you that Shahabuddin was in a hospital. In Uttar Pradesh, a criminal staying in a hospital is a very regular scene. I'll tell you, there was a case in Mumbai in the 90s. It was the JJ hospital case. It's a very known case where Dawood Ibrahim was also involved in that case. It was before the Bombay blast and before Dawood Ibrahim became a criminal. So there were people who went to the JJ hospital to kill some shooters of the Arun Gavli gang in Mumbai. And the people who went inside the JJ hospital were Brijesh Singh, there was Subhash Thakur, and also Dawood Ibrahim. They killed the shooters of Arun Gavli in the hospitals, and in the crossfiring, 2 cops were also killed in the JJ hospital case. And all of these 3 people, they jumped from the 3rd floor of the building of that hospital, and all of them got injured as well. Dawood Ibrahim, after this incident, got against Brijesh Singh and Subhash Thakur. He went on his own pace and he went on his own direction. But Brijesh Singh and Subhash Thakur, they kept doing crime. Brijesh Singh is a very big name in UP mafiosi, you can say. Brijesh Singh is now a BJP MLC and he's in jail. He's in jail from past, say, 10 years. And he has contested from jail itself. And he's a BJP MLC right now. Before him, his wife was a BJP MLC because of him. His nephew, Sushil Singh, is a BJP MLA, and he's a 3 times MLA now. Brijesh Singh is going to contest the MLC elections once again this year because UP is also having the MLC elections simultaneously with the MLA elections. So Brijesh is also going to contest the MLC elections this year, and I'm sure he'll win very easily like the other years. After every 10 or 5 kilometers, you'll find some new names everywhere. So it's, say, for example, in East UP, after Brijesh Singh and Mukhtar Ansari, you'll find names like Sushil Singh, his nephew. You'll find names like Vineet Singh. In Gonda, you'll find names like Brijbhushan Singh. In Gorakhpur, you've got Harishankar Tiwari. In Akbarpur, you have got someone who was with BSP and now he's with SP. His name is Rakesh Pandey. Then in Sultanpur, you'll find the 2 brothers, Sonu Singh and Monu Singh, Chandrabhat Singh and Veerbhadra Singh. In every district, you'll find at least 1, 2, or sometimes more than 4 and 5 mafias, and there is no categorization of such mafias. So you cannot claim that there's just chota mafia and there's the bigger mafia or who is the middle class mafia. They call a mafia is a mafia. So a mafia can be a corporator also, a mafia can be a member of parliament also, a mafia can be a member of legislative council or a member of legislative assembly. The way the people support them is the biggest thing which can be seen as an example of social science or an example of community-based intersectional differences between the communities. Sometimes the people are supporting the mafia or the goon or the gunda or the don because he belongs to their own community or the caste. Sometimes they support him because the mafia used to help them to fight against any other particular mafia or any other particular community. Sometimes they support them on other grounds, say on the grounds of poverty or on the grounds of help, what they used to get in terms of hospital, medical services or educational services or whatever they want to do. Going to the mafia and asking for help in any case, I mean, not only the poor people are going to the mafia to ask for help. Like Sabha has said that she has seen a bureaucrat standing in front of Shahabuddin for admission of his daughter in Aligarh Muslim University. That's a very common scene here. You'll find, I can't say that I'll welcome you to jail, Professor Kisle, but please come to Varanasi someday. I'll take you to the central jail. I'll make you sit with Brijesh Singh. He'll have a cup of tea with him inside the central jail and see what kind of people are coming to see him. Or I'll take you to I'll take you to Vineet Singh, who is not in jail, who lives in a big palatial mansion. Sorry, but see what kind of people are going to see him. They are educated people also. They are bureaucrats also. There are doctors also. They have a lot of work. Someone needs admission. Someone needs a reservation somewhere. Someone needs a land to be, cleared by a particular community. There are inter-community differences as well. So you cannot say that even the educated people are also associated with such mafias or goons and gundas, and they happily go and ask for help. And even this mafias or gundas happily help such educated people in order to say that देखिए हमारे पास पढ़े लिखे लोग भी आ रहे हैं. One day, Brijesh Singh very proudly told me when I went to see him inside the jail for an interview. He very proudly told me that the person sitting next to me is a doctor, and the person who was sitting before me on the same chair was an engineer, and he was an IT topper. So can you imagine someone who is an IT topper is also going inside the jail to meet Brijesh Singh or any other ghoul? I'll give you another example. Subhash Thakur nowadays is in the Fatehgarh jail of Uttar Pradesh, but you'll not find him regularly in the Fatehgarh jail. You'll find him in the BHU hospital, the private ward of BHU hospital after every month. And he stays for around 30 or 40 days regularly in each quarter. He comes on regularly to BHU hospital. 30 days, all the picnic happens inside the hospital. Everyone goes to see him. You'll find big cars, big SUVs and XUVs standing outside the hospital, people going to see him, with sweets and garlands and whatever. And he's sitting there with 6, 7 cell phones and making up phone calls for various people. This is a very common thing. Just like Amar Mani Tripathi is also in jail for this Madhumita Shukla murder case. Madhumita Shukla was a poetess, and I'm sure you remember how she was murdered. Amar Mani Tripathi is also in jail. Amar Mani is also doing the same thing in the jail hospital. He was also using the same clout. He also came to the BHU hospital once upon a time. Now he's spending his time in some other hospital in Gorakhpur. Similarly, when there was no BJP government in UP, when there was Samajwadi Party government or the BSP government, it was very easy to meet Mukhtar Ansari inside the Ghazipur jail. I went to see the Ansari brothers in Ghazipur jail I guess in the year 2007. And that was the same day when Eid was announced. And I saw people from Ghazipur, Mau, Banaras standing in queues in front of the Ghazipur jail. And they went inside the jail to greet both the Ansari brothers for Eid. And they wanted to seek their blessings. And they were, serving everyone with sevaiya inside the jail. Can you imagine thousands of people who were coming inside the jail? They were being served with sevaiya inside the jail. No checking, nothing happened.
Utpal, I'll just ask you to hold on to these absolutely riveting stories that you have. Just to digress, not exactly digress, but ask Sabha this question or provoke her that, while criminalization in politics, criminals in politics, the long list that you've given is true for UP and actually true for all states. There is somehow that it's such a deep rot where people with muscle power or with some form of influence are given tickets, or if you're not, then you actually assume that power while being in politics, and politics and crime and criminality somehow become synonymous. And I'll again jog your and audience's memory of what the Prime Minister had said, that I will dare anybody with criminal charges joining the politics. And what happened in the UP was when Modi and Shah decided to make Keshav Chandra Maurya the president with a dozen criminal charges. He has a charge sheet to be put on a trial murder case, though he said that he was representing a people's protest movement. Keshav, the ruling party's president in the largest state was a criminal. But the one thing that the politicians probably are going to contest is that, these are allegations and these are charges, because our conviction rate in our country is so low. I think it's not even, whatever numbers we are giving, not even a percentage of these numbers are convicted. So at the end of the day, theoretically, they can contest elections, right? But what I was trying to ask Sabha is that, while we were talking about the traditional role of money and muscle in politics, we must also recognize criminalization that's derived from sustained ideological motives, right? Even the brief history of Hindutva consolidation on the progressive recruitment of backward castes and Dalits and movements such as Ram Temple and cow protection are very different from the traditional social bandit phenomenon. Do you feel that that is taking over the bandit phenomenon now?
That's a very complicated question, but obviously many of the people who are at the forefront of Hindutva, including the chief minister, who had multiple cases on him. He was an MP for many years. He used to come to parliament, but they've all been withdrawn after he became, most of them have vanished. Many ministers, I mean, the Home Minister of India, after all, has also faced criminal cases. There have been so many inquiries, so all of there are people, the most powerful people of the ruling establishment have faced criminal cases, and I don't include the Prime Minister here because he has not. I include other figures, but I think the more so yes, there is that. But if you're so there are multiple levels. I mean, you commit a crime, you become a criminal. But are we talking about criminalizing politics or the criminal mafias? And we're looking at why that is so. I would just like to pull back into the sociological terrain in which we exist. When we talk of UP Bihar, I don't think you'll find so many. You might find people with criminal cases in Tamil Nadu, multiple in everywhere. But are you going to find so many dons? I doubt it somehow. I don't know. I could be wrong over here. If you notice, many of the names that Utpal has rattled off, and I'm familiar with this, many of the dons in the Bihar UP region, they tend to be Thakurs and Brahmins and Bhumiyars. Right, Utpal? So you have a very interesting, so we are talking about the dominant caste, the Savarna caste tend to be. You have example of Pappu Yadav of Bihar, who was a Yadav Don, and he was a Robin Hood, a true Robin Hood. You have a few Muslims, but mostly you'll find the gentleman called Dinesh Dubey, who was murdered a year ago in a fascinating encounter. Vikas Dubey, sorry. I don't know why I keep saying Vikas Dubey, who was murdered, a Brahmin Don. Today, parties have made efforts to get members of his family to stand in the Kanpur Dehat region. Congress, I think, has got some distant relative to stand. So there is a sociological question to be asked. What happens? What is the reason that has happened? I had once asked this to my great friend who died last year, an economist called Mr. Shoibal Gupta from an institution called Adri in Patna. So this is more in reference to Bihar than in terms to UP. And he said that these were all permanent settlement. They all came under the permanent settlement, right, of the British Empire, the Bihar region, and bits of eastern UP up to you come to Awadh, and the land pattern is different. He said they all came from there. So they were all big land collectors, debt collectors, and these guys were just collecting things. So in a way, what happens in the post-independence scenario, many of the upper castes, they still become this vision of a guy in a bike, a tough guy on a bike with another guy behind him with a gun slung on his thing. This became common. So you may not have tax collection from the poor, but in their own way, these were people who came from strong castes. So there are complex sociological reasons for this, and I'm sure each one. The question to which I don't have an answer, and I wonder about it, is the question of incomes. Because I know, I would like to mention one great BJP Don, Braj Bhushan Charan Singh. Utpal would know all about him. We have discussed him in the past, Utpal and I. He is the president of the Wrestling Foundation of India currently, very appropriately. You should see a picture of him. I'll show it to you. So he's a wrestler, and he describes himself as a social servant and a social worker and all of that. He's a mega don. He's a big don, and he's a BJP MP, and he has had criminal cases where years ago he hid members of the Dawood Ibrahim gang. So please understand, there's no ideology involved here.
And he was with Samajwadi Party also. He was a member from
Samajwadi Party also. And now he's with BJP. Happily, he's a member of parliament of the BJP. Mega don. But he has many legitimate businesses also. And I think Utpal would be able to elaborate on that kind of thing. But to get back to the question of Hindutva, yes. If you look at it from the criminal, but they're not being treated as criminals right now within the terrain, right? You can have genocidal cases, you can lynch people, you can have riots, but you can still become a minister. Mr. Sanjeev Balyan, who is a minister in the center, MOS, he has cases against him from the Muzaffarnagar riots of 2013. So that is not the terrain. We are asking, does the system give people so little that this is what the system delivers in the end, you know? So that's, I think, the larger question. So, yeah.
I will often, when we discuss elections, and having covered elections for all of us for several decades now, Kashmir and India's northeast really falls off the map. Though Kashmir does not fall off the map when talking about other things, but elections, yes. The larger Indian so-called mainland has very little interest. Now, the kind of mafia don that you're talking about, now when you move from the badlands to the borderlands, assumes a different dimension altogether. I mean, you had a chief minister in Arunachal Pradesh, one of the longest serving chief minister, who had thousands of crores. I mean, I think the largest scam that was till a few years back that was accounted was actually in Arunachal Pradesh, and FCI, the Food Corporation of India scam. You had Nagaland for years and years in Nagaland, the terrorist organizations ran it. I mean, it was their diktat that controlled everything. And we are not talking about the Kattas. We are not talking about Shahabuddin's henchmen. We are talking about guys who are well trained with snipers. We are talking about a full army of people, uniformed army of people who operate on, say Hebron, which was the camp of the NSC and IM, which continues to be the camp of the NSC and IM, now a legitimate camp of the NSC and IM, and then banned one, was 90 degrees perpendicular as the crow flies with the Army's 3 corps. And both agreed to cohabit peacefully for years under a process called ceasefire. Now, the ceasefire is also a wonderful word because it allows you to carry on with everything that is against the law, but not get so. And somehow that got in a way taken over by the political class, and the political class. So it's almost a seduction for politics to take the resort or go and field candidates with criminal backgrounds or with people with muscle or with money. And if we distinguish between the hardware and the software of democracy, as Ram Guha explains, by hardware actually, in political science, or the political features that we may recognize what elections would be and whether a society is democratic or not. A is that in existence of multiple political parties. Do we have that? Yes. Free, fair, and regular elections whereby adult citizens vote to choose between candidates. Do we have? On paper, I suppose we have free, fair in the sense that people queue up and they are casting their vote, and of course there are lots of complaints, and then the election commission is supposed to look at it. There are some re-elections, repolls. We know that happens. The freedom of the press, including the electronic media, and I'll come to that in a little while. Do we have that? We believe we do, though I am a little skeptical now. Independent judiciary, yes. Again, on paper, we have the freedom to live, work, own property anywhere in the country, of which one is citizen. So all these 5 parameters are fulfilled. We check the boxes of democracy. So where do we go wrong? I mean, you have mentioned it. I'll just ask Utpal to again reinforce what he said, that why do political parties field these candidates? Why do citizens vote for that? You've mentioned this, Utpal, but if you can again explain it to the audience, because I think that is the core of the discussion, right? I mean, why? I mean, criminals will be there. Criminals are there. But why do we need criminals? Why does politics need criminals? Why do voters need criminals?
Sir, I would answer to
let Utpal go and then I'll ask Sabha.
I would answer to the latter part first, that why do voters vote for the criminals? The only reason why they vote for the criminals is because of the failure of the system, entire failure of the everything which is related to the system. They vote for the criminals because the criminals are available for them for entire 5 years of the term of any government. One, two, the criminals are, or the representatives of the criminals, they are available for the public at any hour of the day or any hour of the night. That's one. That's another point. Third and more important point is that they are able to help in any way possible, which a policeman cannot do, which a lawyer cannot do, which a doctor cannot do. They can help you in getting your cases filed. They can help you in getting rebates and discounts in the bills of hospitals. They can help you in getting scholarships to your sons and daughters in schools. They can help you in getting other household things. They can also help you in giving you loans or getting you loans without any interest, especially in the cases of the marriage of the daughter, or especially in the cases when someone of the family is ill or he needs a medical supervision in some good hospital. So the connectivity of the criminals with the voters is much better than the connectivity of the bureaucracy. It's much better than the connectivity of the judiciary, or it's much, and it's also much, sometimes it's much better than the connectivity of the media as well. I've seen people giving good quotes about big mafias just for the sake of one reason, that they used to help them on year-long basis. I've seen people who are trying to oppose even the media to go inside a particular village because they don't want the media to write anything against a particular goon or a particular mafia. That is the reason. The connectivity is the reason why all of the political parties want to give tickets to the criminals, because they know that despite the political parties have got their own cadre, despite the political parties have got their own organizational setup or whatever, but the connectivity with the public of the criminals is so strong that this cadre or the organizational structure cannot even think of such kind of connectivity. Whenever I meet, there's a person known as Shyam Narayan Singh alias Vineet Singh. He was a DSP MLC for a long time. Now he has joined hands with BJP, and he's also going to contest MLC from the BJP ticket. That person remembers names of thousands of villages of districts of Mirzapur, Chandauli, and Varanasi. Can you imagine thousands of villages? I mean, he can just keep on mentioning names of villages, and he can mention names of at least 20 to 50 people in every village of those areas. So that means he remembers around thousands of names of villages and thousands of names of people. During the marriage season, he, his wife, his son, and his brother, 4 of them, they go out in 4 different cars to 4 different directions, and they attend around 100 to 150 marriages in a day. I know this is a very hypothetical figure, but they don't spend a lot of time in any marriage. They just go there for 2 minutes, give a particular amount of money or give a particular kind of gift to that area, and then they go to the another spot. Can you imagine 4 members of a family are simultaneously attending 100 marriage parties in total per day during the marriage season? And that happens in 2-3 districts of this area, entire area. So you can imagine the kind of connectivity what they have got. Can you ask any politician to recite names of 100 villages of his constituency? No, he cannot. He cannot even name 25 villages at a time. But they can name 50 villages. They can name 100 villages at a time. They can name thousands of people because they are more connected to them. And the connectivity is a year-long thing. It is not that election aa gaya to chalo ab logon se milte. It's not that they are going to meet people only during the times of elections. They used to meet them regularly. That's a regular phenomenon. If the goon or the mafia is not in his respective constituency, if he has gone to Delhi or to Lucknow to attend the sessions, then their representatives would meet the people there. They have appointed representatives.
Utpal, is it inevitable then that criminals or muscle men or people who have a strong connect with these with their voters with this kind of background will continue to rule the roost? I mean, they will be our lawmakers. Is there no way out of this?
I don't think there's a way out of it, especially for the next 15-20 years in states like UP and Bihar, because the way the system deals with the people's problems, the way the bureaucracy deals with the people's problems, the people do not find themselves more connected with the bureaucracy or with the government or with the officers in any way. Rather, they find these criminals to be more, comparatively more supportive in any other ways as compared to the government officers or any other bureaucrats or any other people who are sitting in any capacity of any government derived profile. So I don't think it is going to end in the next 15 or 20 years, because the people themselves also, they think, say, I regularly give an example that you do a birthday party of a kid in your ghetto and call up 5 professors or call up 5 elite educated people. No one will give a damn to that party. You know, no one will take that party seriously because you have called up some educated or elite people. Call one mafia, call 2 mafias or 1 mafia from the entire region, and see.
Sabah, is that
Even the people from the nearby ghettos and mohallas, they'll come to see and say hello and good morning and good afternoon for the next day.
okay? I mean, we are running out of time, so I'll have to take a few questions also. Sabah, quickly, would you agree, or do you think that the media and the other hardwares of democracy are also now part of this nexus?
I agree on the ground with what Utpal is saying. This is how it works. Some of the language that we use is not adequate for people who don't understand the reality of the ground to understand what is actually happening. Can you imagine a poor guy who has to get something out of a government office? I mean, just imagine. Imagine the nightmare that then unfolds. The downside of this mafia kind of thing is the question of law and order. What is called law and order in this election? The point is, will the mafia's henchmen go and harass shopkeepers? Will it make it difficult for people to work at night? These are the issues, also. So on the one hand, some of them, not all of them, it depends on what kind of, you also have sand mafia of UP bumping off journalists. Some of the data that makes UP one of the most, that makes India one of the most dangerous countries for journalists. You have these mafia bumping off local level reporters and all that. So, one has heard stories like that. I don't know. But
no, I was asking you, Sabah, is the media today also part of this nexus?
Oh, the media is also criminalized. Of course it is. Yeah, it's criminal, the stuff the media does. I'm not saying mafia runs it, but the media spreads hate. The media is there to extract. It often acts as a blackmailing vehicle. Local media, we all know there are stories that you go somewhere and you threaten to do a story unless some local person gives you a payoff. And this is not just UP and Bihar. Some of the worst such stories will come out of a state such as Punjab. Those who have worked on paid news and all of this. And then you look at the content that media is producing, today. Even legacy media is producing that content. They just are ready. And is it not crime that you take government advertisements and so you produce toxic content? To me, that's criminality, which is actually more damaging for society. So, it's a disturbing time, and these are very complex themes. We should expand later. Yeah.
I'm asking the audience to please either raise your hand or ask questions out here while we discuss, because we've discussed criminality and politics for almost an hour now. So we need a little bit of participation from. There is someone called DG who has asked the question: how can we see these same issues of criminalization in politics, in Punjab politics? Okay, I mean, since we discussed a lot of UP. I mentioned about Arunachal Pradesh. I haven't touched Manipur actually. The sitting chief minister, Biren Singh, who was a former journalist and a former acquaintance as well, claims to have the largest collection of guns. And his son actually picked up one of those guns and killed someone, and probably is out on bail now. And the moment there is militancy or insurgency or terrorism in a place, then the situation becomes far more complicated because it's a gun culture out there. That it's gun and another situation that people often don't understand. The bigger picture in those borderlands is a combination of narcotics, gun running, fake currency, racket, all that stuff. And part of the establishment is involved in that. And there is enough enough evidence to corroborate that as well. So, I mean, the rot is so deep that really, Utpal, I mean, I would hate to admit, but it seems like we are not getting out of this rot anytime soon. But Sabah, anything about Punjab? This is the question.
No, I think Punjab, absolutely, you've answered the question. But as I said to you, I discovered, not this election, last time I had traveled in Punjab, during the same assembly election, where it was revealed to me by people that the paid news phenomena, which is a criminal press, if you were a local candidate, you want some publicity somewhere, it is of the criminal level of extortion of the media over there. Some candidates were only telling me, you think the rates in Punjab, they're very high. So there is a certain criminality which is seeped in our society, which is seeped in our system. Who are we in the media to go around calling X, Y, and Z criminals when some of the conduct of our own media is borderline, you are getting paid by somebody, so you do their job for them. What is that? Isn't that what is happening sometimes?
Yeah.
You are getting your revenue from a particular regime, so you do the ideological job for the particular regime. That's what's happening with sections of the media. So that's a complete, it may not be legally a crime, what they're doing, but it's a complete subversion of anything that media is supposed to represent or stand for, any value. So you have a debasement of values across the board. And you have given so little to the poor. They have no way of negotiating the system. So that is why some of these criminals help them negotiate the system. That is what Utpal elaborated for you.
In fact, in Kashmir, when elections are fought, used to be fought, I remember the Ikhwans, or the surrendered militants again, were used. They were used openly by the army. They were used openly by the political parties. The army used the Ikhwans to elect sarpanches. And if you remember, there was a series of sarpanch assassinations and killings by the militant outfits, because they would have their own people. They would actually make an Ikhwan a sarpanch so that they could then have influence over that area. I mean, it was debasement of the worst level. Many of the hardware that I mentioned of politics of a democratic country don't actually exist. They exist on paper, but they actually don't exist on ground. And both of you have given these wonderful stories. Not wonderful, terrible stories, but very riveting. There's another question. It seems like a paradox in Uttar Pradesh that there are criminals who get tickets in politics, and yet the Uttar Pradesh government counts as one of its achievements increasing incidents of police encounters on strong stand against criminals. Yeah.
I'll answer to this question
yes,
of how the government has.
Utpal, you can also see the chat box, I think. Are the voters convinced that Yogi is tough on crimes and criminals, and yet they may vote for criminals? Yes, Utpal, this is a tailor-made for you.
First of all, this entire data scenario of how they have done this crime control in past 4.5 years, most of the criminals who have been killed or encountered or killed in encounters or who have been put into jail, they belong to particular communities first. Secondly, there are criminals like Dhananjay Singh who have got a reward of 25,000 rupees on their head. Dhananjay Singh is also a former member of parliament from BSP. He's also a former MLA from BSP. He is playing cricket. His videos are everywhere playing cricket. His videos are everywhere going to puja and doing a lot more things. He has a reward of 25,000 rupees on his head, but nothing has been done against him. Criminals of a particular community, especially the community which is the community of the chief minister also, they were neither hanged, they were neither attacked, or they were neither arrested in any of the crimes what they have done in past, or any of the crimes what they have done in past 4.5 years. The data which the UP government is always coming up and showing that we are trying to control the crime, it's only against most of the communities, say for example like Muslims, Yadavs, and the Brahmins as well. Is it what you call as a crime control? Is it something which is transparent, which looks transparent to you, that looking at few particular communities through a different eye and looking at the community of the chief minister through a different eye. As far as the people are concerned, I mean, one should go to the ground, one should go to the villages in UP and ask that what kind of criminals were nabbed by the police. Are the big criminals still in jail? Or if they are in jail, are they being treated like a regular criminal? No, they're not. They're treated like VIPs. So the data which is coming out of the Excel sheets is something else, and the data which is coming from the ground is something else. That's the biggest problem in UP.
Also, I think maybe Utpal would be able to answer this, that are popular TV channels or print media owned and controlled by popular criminal political leaders in UP?
No, I don't think any of the TV channels or the regional media houses are owned by or controlled by any of the criminals or any of the mafia or dons. But yes, some of the senior journalists also, or some of the senior editors also, I would not name anyone, but some people sitting in the state capitals of Lucknow and Patna, especially in states North India, they tend to, give some leverage to a particular criminals, or they tend to give leverage to some criminals who belong to their own caste. Casteism is the biggest problem everywhere in UP politics, and that problem has also infested the media of Uttar Pradesh as well. And as far as this killing of people is concerned, CPJ, Committee for Protection of Journalists, has given the data that 5 journalists have been killed in India this last year. That's the highest number across the world. And out of that 5, one was from Uttar Pradesh, Raman Kashyap, who was killed in the Lakhimpur Kheri incident. And Siddiq Kappan is in jail because of UP incident as well. This government has also put a lot of journalists in jail. They've also put a lot of FIRs on the journalists as well. So I'll never say that this government is very good towards the journalists also, as far as the state government is concerned. But yes, there's no case, or there's no subject, there's no, evidence of any criminal or criminal politician holding up the media, or, controlling the media or owning the media in state by far.
Yeah, but politicians controlling the, media is very common in many other states. I mean, starting with Andhra Pradesh, and it all started in Andhra Pradesh, or even, the current chief minister of Assam, Himanta Biswa Sarma, who had a murder case against him when he was a student leader. And once I remember him picking up the phone and telling me, are you going to hold me responsible for something that I did when I was 18 years old? Well, I said, but the law of the land does, holds you responsible.
See, that's what I'm trying to say.
But
they try to enjoy certain pride in being criminals.
Yeah, and he owned a TV channel which he still runs. The most strongest and the most popular TV channel out there is owned by him, and that became also the norm. I mean, the idea that that media should be independent, judiciary should be independent. I mean, all these democratic musts have now been challenged, and
in Uttar Pradesh, the criminals and the mafias, they try to control the media of their particular district. Say for example, in Gonda, you cannot ask any local media person to say anything against Bhushan Saran Singh. Say for example, in Varanasi, no one would speak anything against Brijesh Singh. Similarly, in other districts as well.
Sabha, there's a question for you. I think you could take this. Reet is asking, what does criminals acting as legislators mean for us? Is this our collective failure as a society?
Indeed it is.
I think so. I think that's fairly self-evident. It does. It reveals our failure. It reveals, I think, failure at multiple levels. That of the bureaucracy to listen to people, that of the criminal justice system, that of our politics, that of our fundraising in politics, that of it is embedded in our overall in the failure of the way our democracy functions, because we can certainly say we have an electoral democracy, but yes, we are not able to basically the story that comes out from what we are all saying is that many of the criminals are more representative of the people than non-criminals are. That's what Utpal is telling you, that then the bureaucrats are. So it's a tragedy, but it is what it is.
Ishan has raised his hand. Ishan, do you want to
Yes, sorry, I did not think that I could type this question because it is so not formulated
Yeah.
properly. But from what Utpal and Sabha has been saying, it has been absolutely fascinating. I was just and it's a provocative question, in some ways. Does it really make sense for us to speak about these criminals in the trope of a tragedy, as we seem to be doing? Because it seems to be they seem to be doing exactly the things that politicians are supposed to do.
Yeah.
So bureaucrats are supposed to be doing. They should help out people get stuff and that kind of thing. I mean, I think it seems to me that policemen, instead of arresting these criminals, should actually learn from them and do what they're doing, isn't it? So, I mean, in some ways, it seems to me that there is no contradiction between democracy and criminality at the end of it. It seems that criminality, in fact, is the only reason why democracy exists. Why some amount of democratic redistribution exists. That, people are being able to get things done. Poor people, who will be lost in a bureaucratic office, is being able to get the goods that rightfully belongs to them. Right. And
Yeah.
it is happening because of criminals. So rather than talk in lofty moral terms of lamenting the decline of democracy, it seems that democracy in India is surviving today because of what they are doing. I mean, it's just an open question. I guess the other some factual things that I was really interested in. I look at criminal gangs in the colonial period in Calcutta, actually. So, uh, is my understanding correct that most of these criminals, as Sabha was saying, are upper caste?
Yes.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
do we have stories of how they become criminals?
So that,
What
yeah.
actually, yeah. And are there women criminals? Because in Calcutta, we have a few women gundas. So are there women criminals in UP as well? Thank
So
you.
Utpal will answer ultimately, but I think you've had a very fascinating response to this, Ishan. So thank you for that. Even I wonder sometimes who's a criminal and who's not.
Isn't it a criminal thing to not, serve the people?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
is
So
it not a violation of the basic principles of democracy and
yeah,
your oath of office
yeah,
if you're not
yeah.
helping people out?
So I think part of this, you'll find the politicians with criminal charges. Also, some of them who have left the BJP and gone is because the complaint was that our work was not getting done because nobody was listening to us. They only listened to the chief minister and his bureaucrats. One of the complaints is as simple as that. I don't think Utpal will contradict what I'm saying here. So that you have the facility to do work if you are a criminal who is on the right side of the regime. But where it becomes problematic, we are seeing a system of vigilantism also. No, you bump off your rivals, you
Yeah.
bump off your caste, people will come to you. A lot of this criminality that we are seeing also works on the basis of caste. So I have always, please note that all these UP and Bihar is full of Brahmins and Thakurs and Bhumiyar criminals. Where is the Dalit? You'll find some Dalit bandits in Bundelkhand, in the Bundelkhand part, but you don't find a Dalit Don. You'll find Muslim dons. You've had that phenomena. You've had this very famous guy called Pappu Yadav. So you've had a Yadav don in Bihar. But mostly, given the percentage, it is Thakurs and Brahmins and Bhumiyars in
And
the
they
bad.
they work with OBC and politicians and
Yes, they do.
because
They do. They
UP
do
has had a
because they
long
know.
history
They
of
know.
lower caste governments, right?
Yes, they do. They do. Certainly they do. And I think Utpal can elaborate on that because he's really good on this theme. So, so yeah.
So, Ishan, let's accept to the fact that the netas are always known because of the janta who's voting for them. Am I audible, Ishan? Are you getting me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So that's the fact that the netas are always known by the janta. I mean, the public is what they make them the neta. Give me an example. Say, for example, if one of your friends or anyone whom you know needs some help in a hospital, or he needs 5 units of blood at midnight, he met an accident and what would you do? You'll ask your friends, you'll ask your neighbors, you'll ask people within your vicinity, and if you're not getting any help, And if you are in Uttar Pradesh, and if you try and ask help from a mafia, you just have to make one single phone call and you'll get 10 units of blood or 10 donors standing in front of your door within 5 or 10 minutes. Why? Because not because people are fearing, because he's more connected to people, because since he has given order to them, since people would always, accept his orders, or since people will always accept his order in order to get more closer to him. That's the scenario. Otherwise, you go to a blood bank, otherwise you go to a doctor, call up a bureaucrat and see what is happening.
Utpal, I'm sorry to interrupt you because we have very little time. I am just paraphrasing Ishan's question and or distilling it to one which interests me, is that why is it that the upper caste and the Thakurs and the Bhumiyars become dons?
Sir, in UP, not only the Sabha is always right, is right, but in UP we have also seen Yadav dons as well. We have also seen dons from other communities as well. Whenever some lower people from the lowly caste or people from the Dalit community, they want to become dons, the upper caste people would never let them come at that level, what the level they are enjoying. Okay. So that's a caste discrimination as well. But we cannot say that we only have upper caste dons in UP. We do have Yadav dons. We do have dons from other communities as well. See, the upper caste, even in the BSP regime as well, Mayawati's regime is said to be the best regime in terms of law and order in Uttar Pradesh in past 20-25 years. But even if she belonged to a Dalit community and it was a Dalit government, but most of the upper caste goons and most of the upper caste mafias were with Mayawati at that time as well. And during that regime, even the Yadav mafias like Ramakant Yadav and Umakant Yadav were also, both of these brothers were member of parliaments from BSP, from 2 different seats of Azamgarh. Can you imagine that? 2 brothers, both of them having more than 35 criminal cases against them, and both of them were Yadavs, and both of them were member of parliament from BSP. So this is the social engineering, what they call. But the social engineering fails up when it comes to a man-to-man engineering, when it comes to a community-based engineering, or when it comes to a engineering which is connected to a whole lot of people, where you've got OBCs, MBCs, upper caste, Dalits, and everyone. So that's how the mafia word comes in place, and that's how the connectivity of the mafia words come in place. That's how they show their might, that how much connected they are. They'll call up someone in a OBC community and the votes are done. They'll call up someone in a MBC or EBC community and the votes are managed or regularized. That's how they play. That's how they work. And that's where the governments fail, and that's where the political parties fail.
So, but I think I just like to add that there is no doubt that Dalits don't become dons. It's compared to the numbers in the percentage of the population. I would like to say this, Utpal, that it is a way of getting their clouds back after the Mandal era, or even in running with them. You have so many Brahmin dons. Brahmins are supposed to be the people who peruse the Shastras and give you high thinking. UP is full of Brahmin dons. Bihar is full of Brahmin dons. And so compared to the numerical thing, you still do not have Dalit dons. So there is a sociological element to it. You have some Yadav dons because they are in parts a very dominant peasant community. And
they're martial community.
Yeah. They're a martial, martial, I don't know, but they're a strong vocal peasant community, So this phenomena, but it's preponderance of Dalits and Thakurs. In the world of dons, we have to know that. And there are a few Muslims who always get a high profile because the BJP entire media ecosystem says as if only they are the criminals. So that is true, but it's really Thakurs and Brahmins. But can we agree on that?
And right now we have got more
I think
Thakur
it's an
dons.
important point to focus on,
Right now we have got most number of Thakur dons in past.
I will of course continue to remind you and the audience that that there is an India beyond UP and Bihar, and the dons out there are not Brahmins and or Dalits. They are of all hues. That's because I think, as we have, as Utpal was saying, that we have failed. So clearly we have failed. I don't think so we can make a case for saying that, we are trying, or India is still a young democracy, and that's why I don't think so any of that is going to work. Just before I finish off, just give you an example of what Ishan was saying. 2 examples, Ishan, I'm going to tell you. There was actually the most powerful of the underground groups in India, and one of the oldest actually without a split, was a group called UNLF, is a group called UNLF in Manipur. UNLF was headed by a man called Meghan, now behind jail. Meghan did comparative literature from Jadavpur University, and he came up when he saw that his cadres and his popular support was waning. He came up with a wonderful experiment, a social experiment called Phunga Maru. What he did with Phunga Maru is all that he did was went to the social welfare department of the government, found out the number of people who had applied for small loans, 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees, were denied. Obviously, they would be denied because the whole bureaucratic process is so slow and so glacial. He picked up those names. He sent his men, and they went and gave little loans, which all loans without an interest-free loan that was given, and people took those loans, and they became part of this Phunga Maru. I mean, till it was busted, he was creating and what he was doing obviously was supposed to be done by the government, by the elected government. There was I think a report, the Carnegie the report of 2017 before the 2019 election that was, I think, came out. That report clearly states that the criminality that we see, that we've been talking about today, is because of people's lack of trust in the state's institution. And that lack of trust in the state's institution creates space. In 2012, I remember speaking to Sabyasachi Panda in the forest of Kandamal, the Maoist commander, and the condition that he had laid, 14 conditions for release of 2 Italian hostages, one of them who he handed over to me, and for whatever reason, but he held back the other one, released him 10 days later. But those 14 points were completely democratic. There was nothing undemocratic or illegal in those 14 demands. Those 14 demands were about water coming to some villages, paving of roads, etc., etc. I mean, there wasn't any, and those are the same demands that I figured out was made, not demands, that was presented to the cabinet during Indira Gandhi's time. Similar stuff. I mean, these are what, as Utpal and you said, that the criminals are letting the people have. But of course, that does not justify the criminals, that does justify the deteriorating law and order that we see, the gun culture. I don't know where, how, when this is going to end. I think there is one last question where we have to stop. Is Chandradeep, do you have a question?
If no one has any question, I would like to ask, which is not
we are
relevant.
Run out of time, and we must stop after
this. Yesterday or before yesterday, Telangana Chief Minister has made a comment on Constitution. Said he says Constitution must be rewritten or need to draft again. Like, what are your comments on it? Can we consider this as a political stunt to? Recently he's meeting all the regional parties like Stalin and other Tejasvi Yadav from Bihar or like that. What's your comment on it?
Sabha?
I mean, it's shocking. The Constitution is one of the best things we have. So I'm sorry, because our Constitution is absolutely, it's a marvel, and its application, it's like everybody pays lip service to it, but not in reality. So I would say that I would be very unhappy with anyone who wants to change our Constitution.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sabha. Thank you, Utpal. Thank you, everyone, for participating. I want to thank my researcher, Sumedha Maheshwari, our student, who gave me the questions and the facts and figures. I'm handing this over to Chantal from Hasgeek, and One Vote, who will tell you about the other episodes that we have as part of this 3-part series on Fight for Democracy.
Okay.
A collaboration between One Vote, Hasgeek, and Jindal School of Journalism and Communication. Thanks, Sabha, and thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
I think Chantal has something to say. Chantal.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks everyone for being here. So our next session is on data and elections. It's on the 8th of February, 4 p.m. And we will have Roshan Kishore and Govindraj Etiraj. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.